Con Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
We live in an era of value creation and value intensification. And if you want to go and dominate a market, then what you've got to do is you've got to be really good at what you do and create value in a way that customers actually see it and experience it and are prepared to pay more for it.
Yeah.
Now, Con, I travel a lot and, there's lots of different bags you can buy, but I am absolutely addicted to a brand called Rimmel.
I know, I see them all the time.
And the interesting conversation is they are more expensive than other bags. But I only buy a new bag every 3 years.
Yeah, because it lasts?
Yeah, and it lasts and the wheels are great and it's great service and they're a cool company and it's nice and clean, it's very practical and you've got to know what it is you're doing. But the interesting conversation is that literally they've created value in different ways.
Right.
So there's an experience, there's a conversation and the way they got to look after you. Now, there was a book that was called Jobs to be Done and it was about the Jobs to be Done formula, about actually thinking that, when you think about it, there are three specific customers. And let's use your business at McGrath.
Yep.
And say, do you know that there are people that are your customers that fundamentally love what you do?
Yes.
They really think that McGrath's the bee's knees, the most phenomenal real estate agency on the planet Earth. But did you know there's actually competitors' customers who would clearly not use McGrath?
Yes.
And are going to use a competitor because they think that competitor is better value.
Correct.
Or is a better outcome.
Yeah.
And then there's actually non-consumers who have not yet used the real estate agency service, but they have a ton of bias and preference towards which brand they would use if they did.
Yes.
And somehow they've learnt that by based in how you act in the community, how you market, how you have conversations, the stories that they hear about you and your brand. And this is interesting that ultimately what you've got to do is you've got to try to figure out a perfect market fit so then you can rapidly scale. And so how do I actually work out where the biggest market is in that total addressable market? What does that customer see as value?
Right.
So if you think that there's 100 customers, maybe only 90 of them are actually prepared to pay vendor paid marketing and actually prepared to pay the right fee.
Yes.
And maybe 10% of them are just not interested in that and they're just going to go for the cheapest agent anyway.
Yeah.
That's actually not your market.
Correct.
So Louis Vuitton doesn't cry about what happens at the reject shop, right?
Yep.
And so from that point of view, one of the conversations is that how can you do more before, during and after the transaction? So kind of imagine this as an example. I say to you, okay, great. So I believe that you've been appointed an executor to sell a property on behalf of an estate.
Yep.
And, have you ever done that before? Have you ever been an executor before? Like that's a really difficult thing.
Yeah.
And are there any beneficiaries involved?
Yeah.
And if there are, do they all get along? Now, one of my jobs as a real estate agent is to take the pressure off you having to deal with all of that and to be in a position that ultimately you can put the ball down on a successful sale for the estate.
Yep.
So that you maximise the return for all beneficiaries, but also too, so you don't end up in court for doing the wrong thing. Now, what I'm going to do is I know that you're based in Hobart and you're selling a property here in Sydney. Would it be okay if I just do a quick FaceTime for you before we do every open home so the home's presented brilliantly?
That's gold.
In addition to that, what I was wondering, is it a benefit for us to quickly record today's conversation in audio so then that way I can actually forward that to the beneficiaries, on your behalf. So that way they know what we've spoken about in terms of sales strategy, pricing, sale methodology. So you don't have to try and explain all of that.
Yeah.
And we've got some really good AI that runs itself over that gives you a summary of what was actually discussed in the meeting. Would you be open to that?
Yes.
Is that some good value creation though?
Absolutely.
And it's about
100%.
thinking, how do I now use technology in much more powerful ways?
It's actually the aha moment I just had then is it's packaged. We're already doing what you just said.
Yeah.
We're actually repackaging it in a way that provides more value.
Sure.
So for them, you just got, oh, mate, that just made sense. Because we just sold a property last weekend and the executor was not part of the family because the three brothers don't talk.
Right.
And she had to make a tough call on the reserve and make sure that she got the property sold.
Yeah.
And I saw the pressure that she was under. So I could have only imagined what my agent had to go through at the beginning to get that listing and then obviously get the property prepared and whatnot. That would have been a lifesaver. That's awesome.
So this is the difference, is about using technology to scale. And value creation is also about being able to improve the lifetime spend of a customer.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this and I find this absolutely bizarre that we're an industry that's really, 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 really focused on one-off transactions.
Yes.
Now, like, oh, yeah, well, Con's not going to sell for 7 years. If I'm still in real estate in 7 years, that'll be lucky. You know, like, oh, it's my first sale. Does Con come back at some point? Like, and so, like, and where do I put that in the database? And so all of those things are a really important part. So I'm going to put a challenge to you. Mm-hmm. If we gave you a pen and a piece of paper and you got in the room with, you know, some of your other directors or partners in the business, do you think that you could write out who the top 100 customers are of your business?
So I'm in cheat mode because I went through this with you on Monday when we were up in Brisbane.
Yes.
The answer is no.
Wow.
Yeah. So I could probably do 10 or 15, but if I put all my top partners and performers, if we all had to put in our top 100, absolutely not.
So this is a great project for you to work on over Christmas, Con.
Great one.
So the top 100 customers based on two things. Who are the top 100 customers based on spend?
Yep.
So you might have done a really big transaction as a one-off.
Yes.
But who are your top 100 customers based on volume of transactions?
Yes, a repeat, right?
So that might be a landlord who's actually paid and actually every month is paying $1,500 a year, but they're paying $150 a month for your property management services, but they've actually done that for 80 times. So there's technically 80 transactions of $150 as opposed to, for example, a one-off transaction at 10.
Correct.
So this is important because if you think about who your top 100 customers are, then how do we actually help them to unlock? Now, I'm not a part of it, but one of my clients is in a position that his wife was really, really keen on getting a fancy hamburger. I think they call it a Birkin or something, a handbag. Yeah, from Hermes? Hermes. And so long story short,
did you just say a burger?
I said a Birkin.
I know.
Right? So long story short, they actually went through this situation. He had like this really cool hoodie on the other day, and I was like, man, that's a great hoodie. Where's that from? He said, oh, Hermes. And I was like, man, I went online. It was like $3,000. I was like,
for a hoodie?
Yeah.
Mine's from Adidas, dude. Rebel Sport, $90.
So mate, so the interesting thing was that he was telling me that he has to spend like $30,000 to $40,000 at Hermes for the right to be able to buy the handbag.
No.
And so, so this is a customer ascension model that when you get to a certain level of spend, you unlock the right to spend more.
That's gold.
So then I have worn some shoes that you're aware of called Golden Goose.
Yes.
And I was in the store the other day in Melbourne having a look at one, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get some new ones. And the lady she looked at my profile and she said, oh, you're a gooser. I was like, excuse me? She goes, no. But no. She goes, it's not a bad thing. Let me show you. And they've actually got this customer ascension model. And when you get to the top that you've spent an X amount with them, you actually get invited to Italy to go and sit down with the CEO, and he personally has his team come and see you and make a special pair of one-off shoes that will never be made for anyone else in the world but you.
It's amazing.
Now, the interesting conversation is that like, okay, so now I want to know inside of your business, what's the customer ascension model? So do they get invited to a private breakfast with an economist or with John McGrath or with Con?
Yeah.
Do they unlock some sort of benefit in terms of they go to McGrath Private as an example, which is, you know, a more sophisticated service? You know, what is it that literally that you could provide in a valuable way for valuable intensification where people actually say, hey, you know what, this is really worthwhile being inside of this brand because of the customer ascension model and what it is that they do. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's absolute gold. And I think I'm actually writing a note in my phone right now, thinking to myself, what are we actually doing rather than just servicing them? How do we actually provide more value to them? So I'm thinking about, Greater Western Sydney, the future of property. And I'm thinking about, we've got 2,500 landlords. Who are our top 100 landlords that I could invite for a private breakfast with an economist and, someone like David Borger, who's Business Western Sydney, to talk about the growth of that area, where they get to actually work with each other and network. I think it's fantastic.
So I said to Kylie the other day, that in our business, for example, if someone buys a ticket to prospecting school and then off the back of that, they then come to Blueprint. And then after that, they do a 30-day intense.
Yes.
And then after that, they then come and see me for regular consulting. They're the sorts of people that we then allow to then go and buy days from us.
Yes.
In terms of our days consulting. So we actually naturally have this ascension model.
Right, got you.
And then today, for example, I spent some time with some directors in some businesses, and I took 20 directors for lunch.
Wow. Thanks for the invite.
Well, it happens to be the similar sort of lunch that you went to on Monday.
Oh, stuff it.
But what it actually is, it's a different group of directors,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting path that literally I want you to start to challenge what it is you do to go, who are the top 100 customers?
Yeah.
What can we do to serve them in better ways? And at what spend level do people start to unlock some other benefits?
Yeah, I like that.
What could the benefit be that they could get, that you could provide, that literally ties them more in to want to do more transactions and spend more?
Challenge accepted, mate. Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
Con, I just love this whole idea. You got to provide value first and invoice second. And the best rule that you've ever can have in business is to be someone's friend in the business.
Yes.
So when they get into that situation, they go, ring Con, he'd fix that.
Yeah.
Ring Josh, he'll fix that. And that referral and capability, because you're known to be seriously good at what you do, is the secret to unlocking the power of word of mouth marketing.
Mate, that's exactly what. So for my idea that's reshaping me is the mental board of directors that sit in your brain. So who do I go to when I need advice around business growth or keeping me safe or managing something that might be complex? And I think that's exactly what you need. You need friends in business, you need friends in life, and you need friends that are going to keep you where you need to be.
So that's actually interesting. I think that I can't remember the book. It was interesting about like creating a virtual boardroom.
Yeah.
And the whole conversation is that, okay, what would Con do in this situation?
Correct.
What would Josh do in this situation? What would John McGrath do in this situation? And then you start thinking, what happens if I went to, what would Abraham Lincoln do in this situation? What would Boris Johnson do in this situation?
That's exactly what I had. I had Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was the chairman of my company. When
Right.
we first started at Parramatta, Michael Jordan was the chairman.
Really?
Because he always won the clutch, right? And he was always had his back against the wall. So for me, that's an incredible insight and the ability to be able to actually call upon on what would that person do or how could I get some direction from them.
Something that's changing your view.
Con, I've been on a bit of a journey with the team in our business about the power of documentation and our willingness to change systems, to revisit, to reflect, to project what's actually possible. And okay, great. You would think that if you walked into most real estate practices in Australia and you said, hey guys, is there a rate card here? That they actually have a rate card of what they charge for in property management. They'd have a rate card of what they charge for in sales. They would have a rate card for what marketing costs are. And they'd also have a rate card if you were listing an expired listing and the benefits that are available to someone who is relisting, that some of the portals, for example, might charge less for that relist fee. You would find that in a business, wouldn't you?
No, you wouldn't. It's like absolutely foreign. But it makes so much sense because we spoke about this on Monday again, that toolbox. How do I get a price reduction? What's the menu? What do you do once a property is passed in or, how do I relist an expired or a withdrawn? Yeah, it makes complete common sense and we don't have it.
Which is just crazy because when people say, oh, the issue's fee or the issue's this or my competitor's Y or this is Z. I'm like, guys, like at the end of the day, how does someone learn about what we charge?
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work with an incredible brand in Dubai called House & House. And, the business is rapidly growing and I'm sure the boys won't mind mentioning it, but we actually put on 40 people last month.
Wow.
In their sales team.
Wow.
But a lot of these people are expats. They're moving to Dubai. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, great. This is kind of interesting because how do they learn what the fees? How do they learn what we charge? How do they learn how we present? How do they learn what we got to show in terms of our value prop? And so this is what's really important is that why is it okay for an established business to not have that? But an establishing business that's rapidly growing is an absolute requirement.
It's critical, isn't it? Yeah.
And this is kind of interesting is that I heard the other day that they're now doing audits on property management rent rolls of the distance between what they told the client they would charge them and what is actually being charged.
Oh, wow.
So there's actually all these extra charges like service fees and tech fees and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And some property managers are just not putting through the charge on some of those ancillary one-off items.
Wow.
So, for example, we charge a 10% fee for performing maintenance or an insurance claim on top of whatever the insurance claimable amount is. But they actually are not charging it. And so this is actually a really, and if I went and I said, oh, how much do we charge for that? That we could nearly have an argument in some property management businesses because people are not aware of what those fees and charges actually are.
Gotcha.
So it's a really important conversation to get right, that literally documentation really matters. It can make a big difference on the inside of your business. Your job is to get really clear about what you do, why you do it, and to actually help people to go and sell the value.